The Reds' reigning minor league pitcher of the year made his big league debut. And guess what? The Reds got themselves a win. We're talking Julian Aguiar's big league debut on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, his name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. And combined, we've got like 12 years of experience covering the Cincinnati Reds in podcast form. And we are coming to you every single day because Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds every single day. And on today's show, we will talk about the Reds' 6-3 win that they had up in Toronto against the Blue Jays. A pretty solid debut. I'm not going to go crazy and say that it was like the perfect debut, but a pretty solid debut from one Julian Aguiar. We're going to break down what it could mean for the future of the Reds pitching staff. We're also going to look at some good hitting performances, a couple of injury updates that are important because I think there are a couple of guys they're getting return dates, and I'm not really sure why. And then later on, I have a question about Elly De La Cruz and a strategy for other players at the plate when he is on base. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds that is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started today. And where we will get started, Steve, is
Quick
with
show
the
of hands. Quick show of hands for the YouTubers that are watching right now. Get in the comments. Let me know how many of you guys thought Jeff didn't have a shirt on when you first turned your video on, guys, because I thought Jeff didn't have a shirt on when he popped up.
I appreciate you thinking that my chest is this smooth and this
this
hairless, because it's definitely not.
I'm just saying it caught me off guard.
Not.
That's all. I want to know how many others felt that way.
It is weird because like this is actually like a red, white, and blue shirt. It's just you're not seeing the white and the blue.
You look like a really white guy with a sunburn. A really white guy with a sunburn.
That's saying something about my skin tone. Anyway, I'm getting self-conscious here. Let's talk about Julian Aguiar. I'm not self-conscious about him because he has had a fantastic debut to the point that I was intrigued and I was standing on the soapbox. I was saying, bring this dude up. He's ready to have his major league clock started. And he showed us why on Monday night. And I say fantastic, that might be a little bit over-exaggerating, but it was a pretty nice little beginning.
It was. I mean, obviously, you leave one hanging over the middle of the plate to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you're going to see it parked in the upper deck, which is what we saw. That was a mistake. He grooved one. That's what happens. This is major league hitting. But he didn't let it rattle him. I think that was the most impressive part. He just continued to find the zone and do his thing. 4 innings. Everybody's going to look at that and be like, well, but he only made it 4 innings. If you were watching the game, they talked about this on the broadcast last night, Chris Welsh and John Sadak. He was about to do his 3rd time through the lineup, and I think I liked pulling him there. A successful start. Sure, it was only 4 innings. Let him regroup and watch the film and learn from it and come back out the next time with some confidence under his belt. You know what I mean? I think that was the right move to not try and push him a 3rd time through the lineup. He's thrown enough innings. He's sufficiently stretched out. He could have pitched another couple innings. I think it was more about them not wanting to throw him directly to the Wolves 3rd time through. So I liked the move there. I liked what we saw from him. He definitely showed us that he deserves another look. Interesting thing that the Reds did. He has a real number. I don't know if you saw this or not, but they didn't give him Lucas something Sims in the 60s or 70s. He's got Lucas Sims' old digits. So it looks like they're planning on him being around a little bit.
I would expect that he's going to be up in the major league so long as he A, performs, and B, as long as Hunter Greene is on the injured list. But no, I'm with you. And I totally agree. I had no issue with the Reds pulling him after the 4th inning. He also had a moment too, like it kind of felt like a nice catharsis to his night where at the end of the fourth inning, he had a runner on second base and 2 outs, and he gets a called third strike on a beautiful sinker that breaks in over the plate and gets a called third strike. And as he's walking back to the dugout, the camera kind of zooms in on his face, and he gets a smile, and he kind of goes, huh. Like, you can see him go. He's like, huh. Like, it kind of dawns on him. He's like, yeah, man, I did a thing. You did a thing. And that was a really good evening for him. But he really showed a nice mix. He threw 4 pitches. He threw a curveball, a slider, a changeup, and a sinker. Now, he featured the sinker 63% of the time, and there were some mixed results. There were a couple of loud hits off the sinker, but what he did and what his MO is keeping the ball on the ground. He's not a strikeout pitcher. He did get a couple of strikeouts in this game, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. He's not going to set any sort of records for strikeouts or get Reds fans, their La Rosas and get them home before they even go to the bullpen. That's not what we're talking about with Julian Aguiar. We're talking about command. We're talking about limiting the walks, which he did have 1, but he only had 1. And we're talking about keeping the ball on the ground, and he did a lot of that in that game.
Yeah, even when he did miss, Jeff, he didn't miss by much. He threw 57 pitches in that game. 38 of them were for strikes. Not really a terrible ratio, considering it's his major league debut. I liked what I saw. I think, we talked about this last year when guys kept coming up and we weren't quite sure what we were going to get. But the thing that you and I kept hitting on with the crop of rookies that came up last year was nobody looked overmatched. Nobody looked like they felt the moment was too big for them. And I'll say that again about Julian Aguiar. Last night, he didn't look like he was overmatched. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him. When the game was getting underway, you could see him right before he threw his last couple warm-up pitches. He looked around the stadium, like a nice full circle around, couple deep breaths, and then he was pitching. And I think it's encouraging what we saw. I look forward to seeing what he does next time out. Hopefully we get to see a 5 or 6 inning outing from him as he continues to develop in the majors.
And I would like to see more of him before I go too crazy for what he could do for this Reds rotation and this Reds pitching staff in the future. But I kind of look at him as a guy who could slot in nicely as a 5th starter, like a 4th or a 5th starter, maybe even a 6th starter guy that you kind of bring up and down from AAA as you need him because of his profile. His profile will never put him as an ace pitcher. I'm not thinking that he will lead a pitching staff one day, but he is the perfect kind of dude that you can slot into the end of your rotation and feel really solid every 5th day that he's going to go out, give you 5-6 innings, and he's going to keep the ball in the ballpark. If he can keep the mistake pitches out of the middle of the zone, which was his issue. I mean, Vlad crushed that one. George Springer just barely missed one in his first at bat of the game. And then in George Springer's second at bat of the game, he crushed a double to the gap off of a hanging slider. So there's a little bit of, okay, dude, if you're going to miss outside the zone. But he gets that under control. We are talking about a very solid into the rotation type pitcher.
Yeah, you got to stay out of the middle of the plate. But listen, the Reds, they won this game, Jeff, and the pitching kept them in the game. And finally, we got some hitting after an awful weekend out at Great American Ballpark. The bats woke up a little bit. TJ Friedl had himself a day, 3 for 4, Jeffrey, with a home run, 2 runs in this game. Ty France, 2 for 4, a double, 2 RBIs. You gotta love it. When people hit the baseball, good things happen.
And it's the supporting cast, right? Like, we're still seeing a little bit of a slump for Elly De La Cruz right now. He's kind of had about a 5-6 game slump where he's not really hitting, not really getting on base a ton. So it's good to see everybody else stepping up. And TJ Friedl, I was looking at this because I was curious. For the entire season, he's not played in that many games. He's played in a total of 49 games. And the Reds are 1 game under 500 for that. They're 24-25 in those 49 games. But that just goes to show you, because where they are, they're more than 1 game under 500. He is a guy that is important to this lineup. Since his latest injury, he's been back, and he has played in, I'm doing math on the fly, sorry, 23 games. Yeah. And they're 12-11. in those 23 games since his latest injury. So if they can keep him healthy for long periods of the time during a season, they will see success. And he's shown us why, because he's super versatile. I mean, he crushed another home run where, and I tweeted out at the time, throw him a fastball inside at your own peril, because he's going to crush it over the fence. That just happens with him. But he also did a nice little piece of hitting where he hit a single the opposite way against the lefty. He just, there's something about his game. He can mold it to whatever pitch he sees in whatever situation he faces.
Did you happen to catch the welcome home ovation for one Santiago Espinal in this game? They love him up there.
They do. And I mean, he continues to be the absolute best Major League Baseball player whose OPS is under 700 right now. But he had himself a double and he scored a run. He has been very valuable, especially since the beginning of July. But even at times before the month of July, he's been a very valuable bench player for this team. And I'm happy to see that he is continuing that success.
Listen, let's talk about him for just a minute, Jeff, because in his last 30 games, in the last month, his slash line is 323, 357. He's got a slugging percentage of 505. Cut it a little bit shorter and just talk about his last 2 weeks: 449, 481, 714. He's having a good month.
Yeah, and he had a 16 game, I think it was 16 game, maybe it was 12 game. I don't know. It was 12, 16, something like that. Hitting streak in there, like the middle of July to the beginning of August, and then he sat down for a couple of days, brought him back, and he did an over. So that messed up his hitting streak. Thank you, David Bell. But he has continued to be a key bench piece. The depth of the Reds for next season, I know we said it in the offseason this past year, but we mean it now because we found the deficiencies and we filled them. And Santiago Espinal is a big reason to be excited about it next year.
You're absolutely right. And speaking of next year, we got an injury update, Jeff. We got some updates on the injured players yesterday, and it sounds like maybe more than one of them could be back this season. We're going to talk about who that might be coming up next. All right, everydayers, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. But we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. And with that $5 bet, you are going to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. And you can cancel any of this at any time. Maybe with that $5 bet, you're going to want to place it on the Reds to win a series today up in Toronto, or Tirana, as they call it up there above the border. FanDuel has the Reds odds of winning tonight at plus 122. They're still underdogs on the money line, but you can use your $5 bet and get free NFL Sunday Ticket all at the same time. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. Everydayers, please make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help get you ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, we heard some injury updates. We learned that Hunter Greene was exactly where you and I thought Hunter Greene was when we talked about this yesterday. He was out in LA getting a second opinion about what is going on with his arm. We heard about Graham Ashcraft. We heard about Matty McLain. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, the interesting thing is it's all good news. And I feel like every time we get good news... You
sound suspicious. You sound very suspicious.
Yes. Because when we get good news about Reds injuries, it always seems to go bad very quickly. And I don't know. Like, I kind of feel like when it comes to Matt McLain and Graham Ashcraft, it feels like they're getting rushed back. But let's start first with this good news about Hunter Greene. Yes, he is getting his second opinion, but I think that is to confirm the good news that he got, because Nick Kroll was on MLB Network Radio yesterday, And I think Nick was listening to us because we said, absent any real update, we're going to assume the worst. So he gave us a real update. He said, quote, "We had a doctor see him, had an MRI. It's not as bad as we thought." Oh, not as bad as we thought. Look at that. He went on to say he's going to get checked out again, his second opinion, and we're working through that right now. At this point, it's minimal. He's going to miss some time, obviously, because it's an injury to his elbow, and we just want to be precautious on that. But overall, it's the best case scenario, and hopefully he'll miss a minimal amount of time and be back soon. I don't know why I put that tone on the precautious part of that. I think it's because I find that strange. But they keep saying this. Nick Kroll said this, David Bell said this, and I think I heard somebody else say this. There's a narrative going around the team right now that he's going to be back as soon as he possibly can.
Which means 3 starts. That means he's going to miss 15 days and come off the injured list. That's the minimal amount of time. That's the minimum amount of time before he can
August 29th is the 15-day minimum time is when he would return. So I don't know, man. Like I want to accept it with open arms and 100% positivity on this. I just don't feel like I can yet.
Yeah, I want to hear from Hunter. I want to hear from Hunter after his second opinion and have him look in a camera and be like, "Got good news. Everything's great. We're just being safe. I'll be back on August, whatever you just said." That's what I think that's what I need to hear to feel better, because I definitely don't believe anything David Bell says. And absent a report from the second opinion, I mean, I still don't trust what we're being told.
I continue. We've joked all season that if you got some sort of terminal diagnosis, David Bell would tell you that you're going to be okay and you're going to live forever. So
it's just day to day, just a precaution.
It's a bedside manner, but I don't know that it's true. So I don't know what I feel about that.
Well, let's talk about another one of these guys, because we keep hearing Matt McLain's going to make it back. He's going to be doing baseball activities. He started to fire it up. He tweaked his rib cage, had to shut it down. And now they're talking again. He's going to be firing it back up to the point where he could come back and play this season. And that gives me pause. Given the way the Reds have played and where things are and how they have been incredibly inconsistent, do we really want Matt McLain to rush his way back and try to play big league games this year? Let's talk this out loud, Jeff. What is the benefit? You can say, well, it's a benefit of having him in the lineup and the Reds can make a push and all those things, which may or may not be true. We'll know more closer to the time that he's ready. But what's the benefit to Matt McLain rushing through all this rehab to try and get back and get in games this season? Does it matter to you? Like, do you care if he gets back and plays in games this year?
I don't think I want him to, because let's play this out for just a moment. Let's say that he got all systems go, all clear, ready to play, and they somehow start a rehab assignment today. It's still going to be 3 weeks, because this is basically spring training for him. He really didn't get much of a spring training, and quite frankly, it's been long enough that you're going to take the maximum amount of time in AAA. So that's going to be 3 weeks worth of a rehab stint. I'll tell you exactly how that's going to go. He's going to bat $150, and we're all going to wonder if he's ready to go or not. And should he be brought up? He will be brought up, but that would give him at most, what would that be, 3 weeks? Looking at the calendar.
Oh, we're in September then.
Yeah, we're definitely in September. Let's say it's all right. 1, 2, 3. So he comes back, best case, like pie in the sky. Let's call it what it is. September 11th, he returns.
I say just leave him shut down.
2.5 weeks. Best case scenario. Is that really what we're trying to go for here? Like, and at what point are the Reds actually going to be close enough that having him for 2.5 weeks makes that big of a difference, because they haven't been close enough all season?
Right. The only place that it would matter is if they are actually in contention, serious contention for that final wild card spot.
1 or 2 games.
Because then Matt McLain becomes your Noelvi Marte replacement when you get to the playoffs. But you're right. If they're not within 2 games, 3 games tops. If they haven't cut that to 3 games, then I say you don't rush him back. You just tell Matt, thanks. We're glad you worked hard. We will see you in Goodyear for 2025, baby.
Yeah, because the rib cage injury really wasn't something that stemmed from the labrum, I don't think. That was something that more stemmed from the oblique from last year. So if you're going to have issues with an injury from a year ago and you're still going to try to rush this back, I feel
Well,
like
David Bell did say it was a different area than it was last year. He actually verbalized it that way, but I think it's a result of Matt McLain was pressing, trying to get back, trying to fire it up a little too quickly. So I'm with you.
Well,
3 games or less, then you think about it. Otherwise, shut him down.
And then revisiting the best case scenario again, what's he going to do when he gets to the major leagues? He's going to press because he's going to try to hit 4 home runs a game. Right. Like he is a competitor and he wants to be the best player on this team. And that is one of his most admirable qualities. And I love that about him. It's a reason that I consider him a leader on this team. And they have sorely missed him all year. But they have not missed him to the point that I want them rushing him back and risking re-injury or worse for 2.5 weeks of baseball. I just feel like that is absolutely short-sighted, and they should already have told him, get better, get 1,000% better. We'll see you in Goodyear next year, because at this point, it's not going to help him to come back for 2.5 weeks. And I think that's what we're getting at. The other part with this too, and the other update we got was Graham Ashcraft said that he could begin a throwing program soon, and you don't begin a throwing program unless you mean to have a rehab outing and come back. And again, I don't really know why you'd be coming back, because I really feel like he needs to retrain. I think we're talking about relief pitcher Graham Ashcraft from this point forward. Yeah. I don't see him as a starter.
Which is why I actually wouldn't mind this. If they deem him ready to pitch big league innings, if they bring him up for the last 2 weeks of the season and let him throw out of the bullpen, I'd be okay with that, because I'd like to see how he responds. I'd like to see how he pitches so that he can go into the offseason with a little bit of knowledge about what does he need to work on. Did his pitches, were they effective? Because he can come out and throw with maximum effort now if he's pitching out of the pen. So what did things look like? How did the pitches respond? How did his arm feel? What kind of offseason workout program does he need? I wouldn't mind that one as much. If they're going to pitch him out of the bullpen for sure, I wouldn't mind that one as much.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I could see that working a little bit, but one thing is definitely for sure. I mean, we've got some nice updates and things like that and positive updates, but I still want the Reds to take this with 1,000 grains of salt. Yes, you're right. Brent Suter, almost skipped that over. He threw a bullpen session yesterday before Monday's game in Toronto. Said he felt good after the session. We'll see how he feels today. If he feels good, he'll go on a rehab stint, should be back beginning of September. So that'll boost the bullpen a little bit, and that'll be good.
Yeah, one thing I know, Jeff, no matter what they do with these players, the Reds should not rush. They should not rush Graham Ashcraft. They should not rush Matt McLain. We're in a position now where they don't need to rush them. So the Reds should take their time and make sure they're healthy so that they can head into next year ready to go.
1,000% agree on that one. But something happened on Monday night, Steve, that I believe the Reds should formulate a strategy to avoid for future games. I'll tell you why coming up next. The best way to enhance your baseball watching experience is with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's so easy to see why they are the best, because you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks each and every day. And in some cases, all you need is as little as 4 correct picks in an entry, and you could seriously turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. All you need to do is pick your favorite players, like Elly De La Cruz, and find your favorite stats, and then click more or less. Although it has been a while since Elly's gotten some steals, but I'm feeling it tonight. I think, click more on those steals for tonight's game. So go over and download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB, for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, and that'll get you an instant deposit boost of up to $100 for your first deposit. Prize Picks, run your game. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you can get the Reds' home broadcast from anywhere. Also, make sure you check out CincinnatiRedsTalk.com for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. All right, Steve, I want to kind of close out today's show by talking about this because last night's win, Reds did a good job of scoring a lot of runs and things like that. One guy that really wasn't that much involved was Elly De La Cruz. He had one walk, got on base one time. He did have a sac fly, so he was involved on the RBI thing, which, by the way, quick note on that, first sac fly of the season. Kind of an obscure thing. Doesn't really mean anything, but I thought that was kind of interesting. It goes till August without getting one. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the walk. He gets on first base. Tyler Stevenson comes up to the plate, and you're like, all right, Elly's got a shot here. Here comes number 60. Let's go, bud. First pitch, Tyler Stevenson swings, ground ball, double play. That's it. That's all, folks. Meet. That's all. So I have a thought because I really feel like there should be some sort of Elly plan, the Elly path, as it were. The guy at the plate should at least take pitches up to the point that he gets one strike out. I'm not saying put yourself in a super hole here and get 2 strikes or anything crazy like that. But take pitches. And if the first pitch is a strike, then whatever. But take pitches until you get a first strike and allow Elly that window. Because if Elly steals second base, not only do you not have a double play there, you have a different defensive alignment. Maybe that ball trickles on through for a CNI single and Elly comes around to score. That could be a completely different outcome if they give Elly just 2 seconds to steal second base. Because quite frankly, all I heard from John Sadak and from Chris Welsh on the analytical side of things about the Blue Jays is Christian Kirk can't throw. He has a horrible pop time, and Kevin Gausman is one of the worst pitchers at limiting steals, but we saw none of that.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you for a couple reasons. Reason number one is it would not take opposing pitchers very long at all to figure that out and make the adjustment. If you know the guy is going to take until you throw him a strike, they'll just groove one. So a blanket take, not a good thing. I think you have to trust the hitter in the box. Elly's gone through a rough patch, and that more than anything else is why he hasn't stole a base in 10 days. It's because he's not getting on base. When these things all even out, and they all equal out, and they always do, he'll start stealing bases again. I don't want to put an artificial throttle on the thing. That being said, hitters should have some situational awareness, especially when you are talking about a pitcher that gets more stolen bases against him than the average, and you're talking about a catcher that's not as good as throwing out those runners. So there should have been a pre-game meeting to talk about this a little bit. But by and large, as a general practice, you have to trust the hitters in the box and let them do what they're going to do.
You kind of bring up something I do wonder a little bit, like what the planning strategy is like, because we know that there are guys that are involved in this. We know Jeff Pickler, and you've got multiple different analytics coaches and things like that. So I wonder if they had conversation. I'm sure they did at some point, but I don't know, man. Like I think of the weapons on this team and the abilities on this team, and I don't think it's a debate that the most dangerous ability on the Reds is the speed of Elly De La Cruz. And because it can change a ball game. We've seen it many, many times. I feel like they should at least allow a moment for that. But you're right. I mean, it can't be a blanket statement because then you get any old Joe Schmo just loft the ball up there to get you strike one. But I think there's got to be something. There's got to be something to that. There's got to be a get Elly going type of deal. Like in football, you got like screen passes to get a quarterback going. Like get Elly running on the bases. Like there's got to be something about that.
I mean, I don't disagree that might have been a good situation for Tyler Stevenson to take one. I don't disagree with you, but I don't think it should result in some kind of policy change. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair. There's something about this thing with Elly that I understand. One player cannot, take a team all the way. We've seen it far too many times. You have to have an entire team. You have to have a good supporting cast of multiple hitters and multiple pitchers that can get the thing done. But if you can feature him in some way, whatever that might be, maybe it's he bats leadoff or something. But I think he's in the right spot, batting second. But I think that is something to this. And, this even goes to the idea of his arm might be one of the best things about this team. Maybe you move him to the outfield. I don't know.
Stop it.
I think that, center field.
Stop it.
Really, really gunned somebody down there. But no, this was just something that while I was watching the game, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I think probably the fantasy sports angle of that is what takes my mind that way. But I get your point. I don't know that I could really argue it till I'm blue in the face, but that's just kind of how I felt.
All right, that seems like a good spot to go ahead and wrap it up for today before you talk any more nonsense about Elly in center field. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked on Reds. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. We really do appreciate you being here with us. We love talking baseball with you. Now, you can go check out the Locked On MLB podcast as your second listen. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it covered every single day. You can find the link for Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't even need to search for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, what can folks expect from you and I the rest of the way?
They can expect us to be all over any roster movements and any injury updates to some key players like Hunter Greene, and they can expect us to be locked in every single pitch of every single game because we are Locked On Reds every single day.
You really need some sunscreen on those shoulders, man. Put a shirt on.
I got way more hair than this. I'm just going to say it.